capita than any other place in the world. And so it's kind of like a farmer agricultural town, lots of orchards, citrus, dairy, very, very, very big in the ag industry. So I'm at an AG church here, and I'm the young adults pastor. So me and my wife, we run the young adults ministry, and we just crossed over this weekend to our 2-year mark. So we've been here 2 years now, and it's just been crazy. And we have services every Wednesday night for our young adults, and we started with 7 people. So we had to build it from the ground up, kind of justify even being here in the first place, which was a little scary. And so it's grown and grown. And last night we had 167, which was just really spectacular. So lots of good things happening, and that's what we do.
And about to have your baby.
Oh, and we're about to have a baby. Yes, that's kind of important. So, yeah, we.
How many weeks? 2 weeks? 2 weeks
So
left?
she's 36 weeks tomorrow. So we're 1 week away from the any day now statement from the doctor. So we're close.
Crazy. Cool. Josh, tell us about yourself.
I'm Josh. I like long walks on the beach. Let's see. Pertinent details. I'm 37. I've been married 18 years this summer. I have 5 kids. I'm a missionary, officially a missionary associate in Rotterdam, Netherlands, working with the Europort International Church.
Wow.
With about 1 million different job titles. So I came from Iowa, Ames, Iowa specifically. Is that good?
That's good, man. Explain kind of what the church situation is there, because you're coming into an established church, correct?
Yeah, there's an established Dutch church. And so to give you a little background with that, the Netherlands is very pro-American. So everywhere you go, you see American things, you see slang, all of the clothes, movies, anything that has to do with culture, a lot of American things you see. And then Rotterdam, to filter that down, is about 55% international. And so for us, it feels like a lot like Ames. It's rarer to see a tall Dutch guy than it is to see all the other nationalities. And so the church there is, I mean, when we attempt to speak Dutch, we cannot get someone to respond to us in Dutch in Rotterdam. Everyone speaks English. So we have to be pretty intentional about learning the language. So it gives you an idea of the church. So the church is about 400, which is pretty big for Europe. And then we have launched an English service basically as an extension of that, a church inside of a church it's pretty small at the moment. Most of our engagement is actually through home groups. So I think we've got 4 or 5 home groups, but because of the fluidity of the city, we'll have anywhere from 30 to 60 people on a given Sunday. So
Nice. Cool. Well, that's great. That actually is going to lead right into what we're talking about today, because we're going to talk about life groups, home groups, small groups, whatever you call them, wherever you are. And so I'm going to start off just by giving just some signs of a healthy small group system, and then talk through what you guys do in your locations and what maybe the trip ups you're having, some of the things you're seeing success wise, all that. So first, again, 7 signs of a healthy small group system. The first one is having a clear objective. Why does your small group system exist? What's the purpose of it? Why, even for your leaders, why are they leading their groups? Why are they starting? Is it just for relationships? Is it just for fellowship? Because at least my own experience, if it's only fellowship oriented, it kind of has a timestamp on it. It's only going to last for so long. There has to be more purpose. There has to be more objectives as to why that group is going to exist. The second one is you need point leadership. So does your small group, is it a conglomerate of people that are just getting together, or is there a leader in place that's truly providing leadership to that group? And that even goes back to the objectives. One of the things I'm sure we've all seen it at different levels, we've seen churches that go through, factions or cliques or, closed groups where nobody else can get in. Small groups have a tendency to kind of lean creating that if there isn't point leadership that's pointing back to the objectives of why we exist. Not having point leadership means that it's kind of a free-for-all for anybody that's joining to bring their own agenda and push that agenda forward. And so, at the same time, on more of a practical side, hey, Brandon, how's it going, man? We can't hear you. Just wave. Hey, we're talking about small groups today, and we're talking about signs of a healthy small group. So when we have point leadership on a practical level, it keeps the conversation going. So I'm sure we've all been in sort of group setting where nobody wants to talk, or everybody wants to talk about everything other than the topic that they're supposed to be talking about. So what a point leadership, somebody who's on point, keeps the group moving in a forward direction. Make sure that it doesn't become a gossip group, making sure that it doesn't become a complaining department or something like that. Point leadership provides all that. And then the other side of it, it also provides security. Because, one of the things we want life groups or small groups to be is a place where relationships can grow and people can feel safe enough to where they can share their own problems, their own challenges, and walk through that the smaller group setting rather than the large church body setting. And so if you don't have somebody who's the point leader, it's hard to create that environment because nobody is sure of where the boundaries are. Nobody's sure of what's expected of them. And a point leader will provide that for them. So that's the second one. The third one is having a coaching element. Now, I don't know how familiar each of you are with coaching, how much you're using that in your life group systems. But what a coaching element really is, it's probably basic level, is being able to ask good questions and allow others to fill the space. So if you've ever been to a small group where the leader kind of sees it as their platform to then kind of share their thoughts, share their own ideas, share their agenda, and they're the only ones that really talk, they don't really facilitate discussion, that's not really a small group. And so what small group leaders really need to be is they need to be good at facilitating discussion, which means they have a good coaching element built into what they're doing. They're able to ask good questions. They're able to redirect with questions. They're able to pull out from what somebody has said to create a question that keeps the conversation not only moving forward, but going deeper as it moves forward. And so having a good coaching element built into your leadership training for your leaders is a huge, huge piece. The fourth is having leadership investment. Are your leaders developing other leaders? Is it cyclical? So one of the things that we do here where I'm at is we are trying to teach our small group leaders that your group is not going to exist for the next 20 years. The purpose of your group is to multiply, and that means that you are training someone else to multiply into another group. So if you don't have somebody in your group that you are currently investing into to multiply out, then your group is not on the successful track that we expect. And so are the leaders of your life groups, are they investing into someone else so that eventually that person can step out and lead themselves? And again, the idea is a small group should only be 10, maybe 20 people. If they're hitting 20, they're moving beyond a small group and they're really kind of becoming an entity within themselves. And so the idea would be is you want that to multiply out on a regular basis. And so again, what we do here is we actually have sessions. We have a spring session, summer session, fall session. And so that creates points where groups can naturally multiply out into other groups without disrupting the flow of the group in that session. And so, so having good leadership investment built into the small group system. The fifth is having, making sure that the mindset of your groups are open. Again, going back to, we don't want cliques. We don't want groups that are not open to new people, because really, especially in our, in our current culture, and I don't know for you, Josh, if it's the same way, but a lot of people are not looking at the church services on a Sunday morning as the front door or as the entry point in a church. A lot of times, looking at the small group system as an entry point. It's less threatening, it's more inviting, it's more relationally oriented, and so people are less intimidated to walk into a small group than they are to walk into a big church service. And so if your group has a closed mindset, then they're not able to be welcoming to those new people. And a lot of times you as ministry leaders will never have the opportunity to invest in them because they never actually make it into the church itself. And so having an open group mindset. The sixth is having a broad perspective on what small groups are. So small groups come in all shapes and sizes. So when I was in, and I really learned this when I was in DC, working there, a small group essentially was a point leader with a heart for something, collecting people to do that same thing. So whether it was a Bible study, whether it was a prayer group, whether it was an activity group, whether it was an outreach group, whatever the leader could imagine, a small group could come out of that. If we have a narrow idea of small group is, we're going to go through Matthew together. The entire church and every small group is going to go through Matthew, and we're going to study the daylights out of Matthew this year. Well, your small group system probably isn't going to grow significantly because you're not meeting people where they are. You're forcing them to meet you where you are as a church. And so having a broad idea of what life groups are. So one of my favorite groups that we have start for this summer, we have a group, a small group who, after services on Sunday, they all meet in the parking lot. They get their bikes off their cars, they go change in the bathroom, and then they go ride for a few hours, go to lunch, ride back to the church, and that's their life group. Their life group is completely about riding bikes and enjoying the afternoon and being together and grabbing lunch and hanging out. So just thinking through, do you have a broad perspective on what life groups are, and are you allowing the imagination and the creativity of your leaders to determine how your life group system is operating and growing? Again, going back to, you have the objectives in place. And so the objectives are kind of like the walls of the fence. You can make that really broad, make those objectives broad enough to where there's lots of playroom in the middle, but enough space for people to be creative. And then the last one is tie it into your assimilation process. So again, one of the things that we often see is small groups kind of exist on their own, and they're not tied to any other portion of the church. The small group system should be tied to whatever your discipleship process is, whatever, if you have a Sunday morning class that they go through, or, you have a foundations class or an alpha class or something like that, or if you have a discipleship process or a leadership process, making sure that your small group system is pushing people that direction. Because again, the point of small groups is not just to be in small groups. You want people to integrate in the entirety of the church as a whole. And so if you're pushing them from small group into the discipleship process, the likelihood of them assimilating into the church as a whole, being a part of your faith community and growing along with everybody else is going to go way up. So making sure that your leaders understand part of what you're trying to do is push people into the group or into the discipleship process or the assimilation process. So those are kind of my 7, success points for life groups. For you guys, what have you found in whatever system that you're doing now? What are you finding that's working for you? Is anything working for you guys? No. Then
For I guess I kind of not intentionally, but my ministry essentially challenges the American way of church right now. We don't have one small group. We literally
intentionally.
we have not had them, and not because I don't want them. I would love to. We tried starting them, and they were not a brilliant success. I'd say they were probably the opposite of a brilliant success. And so for me, I thought, you know what, until we have a better handle on this, most of the people we're getting are fresh off the street, purely saved. You can find somebody with a leadership gifting, but you know, they're still so green broke that there was no real leadership and there was no real fruit, I guess you would say. There wasn't a lot of people flocking to small groups. And
Right.
so there was a lot of energy, a lot of effort going into them. And we were still trying to just get services for one kind of central gathering place going at the same time. And so for
Right.
me, they were two universes that we couldn't manage at the same time. So I essentially just let the one season of small groups run its course, and then we didn't start them back up. So that was a huge question for me today, because we're going to start them back up in the fall now that we have a bit of critical mass. We have some people who are discipled, who can lead something, and hopefully they're way out of a wet paper sack, and they'll be able to help the group in some way. So I mean, I got nothing. Like I've talked to so many people about small groups. Some people are like, man, let anyone lead one. Anybody can. They can just step up, and if they want to get 10 people at their house next week, we call that a small group. We count those numbers or whatever. And there's some people who are like, no, you can't lead for 6 months. You got to go through, you got to get saved. You got to get baptized in the Holy Spirit. We need you to get, 10 points, 12 ways, and 14 pillars on how to be a good leader. And so I've seen so many things in the vast spectrum of, like you said, small groups come in different sizes and shapes depending on who you're talking to. So I'm just like, man, I don't know. I don't know. It boggles me. I'm a service guy. I love services. That's my bread and butter. And small groups are this world that I love going to a small group, but when you're having to put systems in place to make more and make them in general, it's tough.
Well, okay. So does anybody have anything that can help Alan out? Yeah, still can't hear Brandon.
What's the context? When you say young adult, what age group is that?
18 to 25-year-olds.
Yeah, that is shocking then, because like that whole world is built around community.
So shocking. Totally shocking.
Huh.
Alan, would you say a large part of that though is the leadership capability of the ones you have, or is it that they're not interested in small groups?
It was a little of both, I think, because, demographically, this is not a town that you go to. It's a town that you leave from. So a lot of the young adults, I don't think, care to make a big time investment. And so naturally the push for that kind of interpersonal relationship, it sounds like, man, anybody would want to do this. But I think for a lot of these guys, they don't latch on. So that's the second part. The first part was, we didn't, at the point where we were trying small groups, we didn't really have any kind of standout leaders. And so they were the small group leader. They were in charge of facilitating discussion. But at the same time, I mean, 2 or 3 people would show up, 4 or 5 people would show up. Sometimes they would just, we'll just cancel the whole night. And so it was just so hodgepodge. And, so yeah, it was quite shocking. I don't know if that answered the question, but
yeah.
Well, I got some. I'm just trying to put my mind around it as well. So you've been there 2 years. You've seen it go from 7 to about you said like 160, correct? So
That's right.
there has to be some kind of connection that they're already getting anyways. Would you say that there is like an organic small group system to where, I mean, because if they're not connecting, they wouldn't come, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So
Right.
It seems like a very organic system to where they are already hanging out. Is
Right.
that correct?
Yeah, so that's good. Yeah, they're definitely like pockets that are just organic groups. You could call it small groups without any systems or structure set up by me. You know, people are hanging out, and you can see that through social media every week. You can just scroll through any of it, and you're going, "Oh wow!" I mean, they're getting together. There's just no purpose or intentionality set by me for that to happen.
Well, now it sounds like this is the perfect time to take advantage of the organic element that you already have set up, and now you can really just what might not have worked a year ago because of the culture that you've created might work now, and I think you unintentionally set yourself up for success by making it to a place where they feel connected already. So they might. I was just wondering about that, and I think that that's interesting.
Well, and let me jump off of that too. Is there a commonality among the groups that have formed? Like, are they around a common interest or common personality type or anything? Like, can you see when you look at the groups that kind of exist, is there anything that you can pinpoint as to why those groups have gathered?
Really, those people are meeting, I think, because one of two things. One, they're serving somewhere in our church, so they rub shoulders with other people who are serving, and then all of those people who are serving go do life together outside of their serving role. Or two, they join our school of ministry here, and that automatically puts them around the same group of people 20 to 40 hours a week as they're doing internships and stuff like that. And that naturally forms new circles of friends. So those are the two on-ramps, so to speak. Serving or joining a team to serve, that's a huge on-ramp to getting them into, I guess, these organic pockets of people that hang out everywhere.
Right. Got it. Anybody else? Any other thought? Hey, Brandon, you can use the chat if you need to.
Is it your headphones, Brandon?
Hey, Josh, how would you say small group experience for you look different from here in the States to where you are now? Does it look that much different?
It's not a whole lot different. In the States, and I was kind of able to make the small group structures and the systems and shape that, customize it to what our church was doing and what the purpose was and where we were headed, those sorts of things. So here, there's a couple of things that run into that. You've got despite the Netherlands being a socially forward society, in that they're 5 years ahead or even 10 years ahead of the US, in that religion is just kind of something we tried and are done with it. And then you've got this background of everyone coming from Reformed churches, which we would call mainline. And so their experience is fairly tainted. And on top of that, the home group experience in an evangelical church or a mainline church is where someone literally, you do it's basically a church service. Someone preaches and you might do a song, but it's Bible study and someone talking about their opinion. So the groups here, we've obviously, with a church plant, we've set out to be very, obviously we want people to be evangelistic and invite their friends. But there's still that DNA that comes from the old Dutch perspective. And so you're fighting against that a little bit always. It helps that there's so many internationals, but for the most part, yeah, it's there's this huge contrast, just like in the US. You either have a group that's been together forever and ever and ever, and they wouldn't dare think of inviting anyone new because that would be weird.
Right.
And obviously we don't deal with those. Those are mostly the groups coming from the Dutch church, but then ours are new groups, and it's kind of just, we've really had to lead the way in that it's a discussion group led by a leader, and there's different components where it's discussion based. Like we would, just like you do life group in the States there, it's an uncommon thought. They're not used to that.
Got it.
Unless they're the leader and then they want to talk too much.
Right, exactly. Energy fixtures.
What'd you say?
Trying to figure out if Brandon's figured his stuff out.
Oh,
He's got nothing. All right, again, you can use the chat box. Joel, you've been in 2 churches now? Well, 3 really, but 2 mainly.
Yeah.
How have the small group systems in those 2 churches, how have they worked? What has worked with them?
Well, technically through the 3 that I've been at, the one I was a volunteer, it took a lot of work, but they were successful. So second one in Illinois, I tell you what, people in Illinois are a lot different than anywhere that I've ever been, and the culture for small groups, in Danville, Illinois, it worked kind of, but it was hard to find what you said, finding a leader to lead. It was hard to find people that wanted to consistently lead. They felt immediately like it was a burden. Oh no, now I have to have so many meetings for the next 6 months, and I'm like, and I even see that now where I'm at in Decatur. So it's been interesting. Small groups really haven't worked here. They've tried it, and we've toyed around with the idea because a lot of them are discipleship classes. So they didn't really work, because right now it's even tough to get people here to just come on a Sunday on a consistent basis. So to ask them to come one other night, it's practically impossible. So that's what we're actually getting ready to start with our youth. We're trying to get them to understand that the importance of church, it's not about a building, but it's about connecting and getting those things. And we have, like, no joke, we went from about 2 months ago, we had about 35 kids. We dropped down to about 6 kids, and then we jumped back up to about 20 to 25. And they are mostly junior hires now. So we went from it almost like flip-flopped. And so now we're getting ready to introduce small groups and see how it's going to work, because I have to have leaders that want to help, because I can do it, but they get me 99% of the time. And so this fall, we're actually going to start launching a junior high and a senior high one, and do it on a Sunday night to see if it's going to work, and to make it more of a there will always be a point. Like, we will have our time to talk, but most of the nights will be connection to get kids to understand that church is fun. It's not just boring. Because I felt like that last night as I was speaking. Like, some of my kids are like, if I wanted to get lectured, I would stay at home with my mom, But it wasn't even a lecture. It was just we're still in that process of trying things out. But there has to be a buy-in. If you don't have a buy-in for small groups, they'll never work. But I look at it as this, is that you have so many friendships in a personal life that if you don't hang out with people, you're doing disservice to your own life. But if you're allowing yourself to allow people in, like I'm a people person. I want people at my house constantly. My wife hates it because we are always constantly cleaning. We have 4 kids. We know it gets crazy. So, but I know that if I can get them around me and we can have a little bit of fun and we can laugh, we can, like the good book says, where 2 or 3 are gathered, there's food, but we just try our best to develop that culture. And, but it takes people to want it. And,
Right.
So it's still learning. That's still a learning process of how I know I want it, but how can I let other people want it too?
Right. Do you guys feel, just from the experience that you've had, is there a difference in small group success when you have from a blue collar demographic to a white collar demographic?
I would think so. I think that the blue collar demographic are constantly working. So when they have their night off, they don't want it to be involved with anything else, or
Right.
like we were talking earlier, we have stuff to do at home. So, we gotta fix up a room, or we gotta fix up the kitchen. So I think that in a lot of places, and I even look at this, like some of the people that are in the blue collar culture, their houses aren't what they call, up to par. And so I think sometimes it's even hard for them to invite people over. Well, they're going to judge me because I don't live in a massive house. So I think sometimes even that's why I really think that small groups in public places work fantastic, or even if they're every other month, to where they are focused around events, like, taking a group to go to like a baseball game, or taking a group to go out to a park and cook out there. But I've noticed that a lot of the people in where I'm at, because Danville was definitely a lower income. Everyone worked 50 to 60 hours a week. And when they were not working, they didn't want their time interrupted. And even here in Decatur, it's the same thing, a farming community. And so it's interesting to see that. I never thought, but being in Springfield, Missouri for a little bit, we had a little bit more mixture of the white collar, and those people had very successful groups, because people wanted to go see their house, say, wow, what did they do to make all this money? But at least they're there, they got there. And so I think that it is a culture thing that way too.
Yeah. Alan, for you, where would you say your group is, white collar or blue collar?
I mean, for young adults, they're all slaves. They work some dead end job somewhere, and
right. But they all come from somewhere. Like they come from white collar, come from blue collar.
So it's really interesting. So our demographic is 50% Hispanic, 50% white, and it's also very Dutch, which is funny that someone from the Netherlands is here on a Dutch community. Yeah. And there's a saying around town: if you ain't Dutch, you ain't much. And it's like, I don't know if that's true where you are, but there are the pockets of the blonde hair, blue-eyed, tall, lanky people, and they are the masters, and the Hispanics are the servants. It's crazy. They call them the pickers. I don't know if you've seen the movie McFarland. That's 45 minutes from here. So McFarland, with all of the fields and all of the farms, that's a lot more of a rundown place. We're way larger of a community than they are. But the Hispanic population is going to be your blue collar people. So if you have a Hispanic person in the audience, that's where they came from. which was hardworking, lower class jobs. And then if you have a white person, they're probably an entrepreneur, they're a business owner. They own 10, like one guy last night, he said, yeah, we own 10,000 cattle, just like that. We own 10,000, and that's not including like the other section that we have that are on the ground right now. I don't even know what that means. So I was just like, you own 10,000 cattle. Like, that's crazy. He was a white guy and tall, lanky, blue-eyed, blonde hair. And so it's like a blend of these people, because it's literally almost a 50-50 split between the two.
Got it. Josh, for you, how does that break? Is blue collar, white collar the same? Is that dynamic still play the same for you where you are?
Yeah, I was trying to think through that, and thinking about past experience as well in Ames here. Yeah, it's actually, it is similar to what Alan just described. So, the Netherlands as a whole is technologically advanced, so there's lots of technology jobs here.
Right.
The Netherlands has a number of other countries that are considered Dutch that are not in Europe, kind of like our Puerto Rico.
Okay.
And so Suriname is one of them from South America. There's the Antilles, there's Aruba, and those people all come, and obviously they're a different complexion, but they're Dutch citizens.
Right.
And they would come to the Netherlands because the economy is better and they're looking for opportunity. So yeah, there is some of that. There is a little bit of that at play. I would say overall, though, yeah, because you have socialism here, any type of person that has a job likely has a house and resources to be able to
Right.
to do a home group and potentially, have influence, those sorts of things to I guess to attract people, so to speak. So it's not a whole lot different, but it's not as sharp as what Alan's talking about.
Gotcha. So for you guys, your small group system, is there an intentionality that it ties into your assimilation? Is it viewed as a part of your assimilation and part of your personal development process? How do those two things work for you guys?
So let me speak to that a little bit here. I took over a system that I kind of didn't create, and I don't have a lot of authority to change. However, to speak to that, for instance, in Ames, the goal was always building relationships with a new person as soon as they walk in the door, and how do we create those Velcro points? And because there was not a culture of inviting where people were just naturally inviting new people or non-home groupers to their home group, one of the systems that I set in place is I made my home group leaders, I put them in rotation, and I made them a host for a Sunday. And it was their job basically to look out for new people or for people who weren't in life groups and to invite them and get them connected with other life group leaders. And that was kind of part of the Velcro, one of the first Velcro points as far as building relationship and then getting them assimilated in, or integrated into the church and into some of the subsystems, just, like we talk about, some of the training, some of the discipleship and mentoring opportunities that come out of relationships, and then, of course, ministries that are available.
Good. So, Alan, at this point, is anything resonating with you?
Yes, to a degree, for sure. I think the two biggest questions that I have is, one, do you guys provide curriculum or anything like that? Or is it totally free market? It's the individual's choice. You approach somebody who, I don't know, goes hiking in the woods or whatever. And you're like, hey, I want you to start a hiking group. Just do that. If you pray at the beginning, sweet. If you talk about the Lord on top of the mountain or whatever, awesome. Do that every week on a Monday for me, or is it blended? Do you have some curriculum if people are like, I just want to talk in my house and provide Chex Mix and Fritos for everybody? Is that cool? Sure. Here you go. Here's the curriculum that we want you to use. So that's like, I know that back in probably the early 2000s, everything was curriculum based. Everything was just get in homes and do this. And I've heard of a lot of people like you're talking about, Brandon, who have like a bike riding group, and that does its own thing and all of that. So I guess that's the question. Do you have curriculum? Do you use it often? Do you see more people just approaching you, starting activity groups, I guess is the best way to label them, over discussion groups nowadays?
Ours, I guess, I'll let you guys. Yeah, go ahead. So we recently kicked off kind of, I guess it's new, I've only been here a year, but it's kind of a new setup for how the life groups run here. And they have the option, the life group leaders have the option to have a live group, a learn group, a love group, and maybe there's one more, a learn group. I don't know. So they can choose what their life group looks like. And so like if they choose to lead a learn group, that's more discipleship based. They're learning, they're growing. Maybe it's couples who are going through how to be happily married or, whatever. We have groups that cover a lot of that. And then the live groups, it just is like a hangout. We have a group that just plays disc golf once a week. We have a group that goes bike riding after church. I think there's like a knitting group or something like that, but they have like just hangout groups for anything. And, it's kind of like what the Oaks did with their teen groups when they had like, hey, this is the wood shop small group. It's very like just hangout oriented. And then the love groups are outreach focused. And they are like, the one that comes to mind is there's a group that goes around to nursing homes and stuff. And they just like, they're always doing something outreach focused. And sometimes it's the same thing. And sometimes they do different things. But I think that people have responded really well to it. I think the overall excitement for life groups has kind of grown because the people who really want to, have discipleship in a life group format, they still have that. But the people who, just want to hang out, they also get that option. And the cool thing that I've noticed is it seems to me like there's a good handful of people who are now involved in multiple life groups. And Brandon, maybe you can confirm or deny that. But I've just heard from a lot of people who it sounds like they're in a learn group and they're doing discipleship with one group of people. Then they're also in a live group that's a different group of people, like going through life together, hanging out with whatever those focused activities are. And it seems like that's cool because they're being exposed to two different groups of people within the church. Yeah, that's our setup.
That's great. I mean, that's genius. That's the coolest thing I've heard.
It wasn't my idea, so.
Sweet. That's awesome. Life groups are live, learn, and love. That's amazing.
Yeah, and we actually kicked off this summer. We added another segment. They're called health groups. And so those are groups that are focused on developing spiritual health, emotional health, physical health, and relational health. And so any ones that kind of fit in that category, we kicked off a series in May. And so Pastor wanted to include life groups that are focused on those four areas. And so we created a fourth category that would fit that.
Excellent.
I'd be interested to know long-term what the result is of people being in multiple groups. That'd be kind of, positive or negative. I'd be interested in finding that out. So, Alan, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'll come back to that.
I was just going to say, so obviously these guys have an amazing home group structure to speak to. Just to give you some additional ideas, what we've done is starting out home groups as a whole in our church. What we did is we would, every year at the beginning of the year, we would do a campaign, meaning the pastor would do a 4, 6, or 8 week sermon series on something that was really laid on his heart, and then all of the groups would do that, would talk about it, the sermon that particular week. And then one of the things that it did starting out is that it created a community between all of the groups, like in the church foyer, in discussion base. Hey, what week are you on? And kind of, we called it, it created the Starbucks language. And then from there, we really had to resource. It became a training and resourcing leaders for what their group needed. So like, hey, my group really needs to do which blends into all the categories that Brandon's talking about. But out of that, one of the things that was most transformational, because we also did the sports groups, like I would call my softball team on in the summer, was basically a home group. And I took every opportunity I could, because I was the only guy, pretty much the only guy, even though it was a church softball team, from the church. But the most transformational part of it was that we really challenged the groups that they had to do service projects. And out of that, really, it knit groups together. It really changed the whole dynamic of the church. In that, I had a homeless guy in my home group for 8 months. Because it enabled people that had, a guy in our group who would have never stepped out on his own to pursue a particular passion or a ministry that he wanted to, was reaching out to the homeless, which in Ames, Iowa is crazy because there's about 4 of them. And so we walked the river and found a guy, and he ended up being in our life group, and picked him up and brought him to church for over a year. So, and those were those home groups that were basically, for lack of a better way to say it, almost forced to do service projects. Those groups were really transformed themselves, and then transformational. They made a huge impact on the community. That's, for us, in that particular structure, the service groups were really, really a big deal.
Wow, that's good.
So just some additional ideas.
Yeah, and I would say, the biggest thing for you, Alan, is just, you got to know your culture. You got to know what you're working with. But even like Josh was saying, you kind of have to know why you're doing it. What is your purpose? What are the objectives?
Right.
Because if it is discipleship oriented, if it is, spiritual depth, if that's the purpose of it, then, even for us, that's where our learn groups fit in. Is if we were to say, we're going to have focus on spiritual development.
Hi.
Hey, you made it.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm there. Let's go.
Nice. But yeah, so part of it is just knowing why your groups exist, and what your purpose of them is. So go back to earlier what I was going to say, Josh, is some of it is managing what your expectations are. So even going back to the people attending different groups, the idea is not you have to be okay with, you're not expecting somebody to become tied into a specific group, and be consistent in that. And I think a lot of times in church, we want that. We want consistent attendance on Sunday. We want them to come on Wednesday, and we want them to be consistent in their small group. Well, the reality is, at least, from where I am, and probably for you, Alan, with young adults, consistency is 2-3 times a month, maybe, and so, if they are involved in other groups, they probably go to those groups for different reasons. So they go to, like for us, they may go to a live group just because they want a social group to be a part of. They go to a learn group because they want to grow, and there's a specific topic that is available to them, and that's why they're going. And so, the idea would be, I think the trick would be making sure people don't slip through the cracks in that system, to make sure that they're not just bouncing to small groups, but never entering into the whole of the church body. And again, that's where good trained leaders come into the equation. If they're looking out for those people and trying to connect them, then you're gonna make sure that they don't get lost in the mix. And so, again, even when I was in DC, the approach was kind of what you were, probably more an extreme of what you were saying, Alan, earlier, was, hey, I got this thing I'm doing. Do you want to be a part of it? That's a small group. That was kind of the idea when I was out there, anything and everything. So there was a Saturday group that was, some Taekwondo instructor. He had, 6 or 7 people that he essentially did a Taekwondo lesson as his small group. And then they would, have a prayer or whatever. When I was in Springfield, I led a basketball group every Saturday morning. We got together for 2 or 3 hours. We played basketball, we touched base, and really it was about relational connection. So it just goes down to what your purposes are and designing a system to meet those objectives. The other thing that, the other part of your question way back at the beginning that I don't think anybody's really touched on is the leadership development of those leaders. And so, again, it goes back to what you're looking at and how you're wanting to design that. So for us, we have a process that people have to go through in order to be life group leaders. And so they have to go through our initial, we call it first steps, but it's an alpha course or a newcomers course or believers course, whatever you want to call it. They go through that, and then they go through the first 3 levels of our discipleship program, which if anybody puts any time or effort into going through it, it takes roughly 6 months. And there's a couple different reasons for that. The first is we want to make sure that they're tied into the church and they're a part. They're not just flying in, flying out, and taking people with them. The other thing is we want to make sure that not only are they capable to lead groups, but they are equipped by us. And not that it has to be by us, but too often in the church, we put people in, hey, we need helpers, and we throw them in without really training them or helping them. We don't set them up for success. And so we want to make sure that when we're putting our life group leaders in place, that they feel confident enough in what they're doing and in the skill set that they need, that they can lead a small group well. And so the third level of the discipleship process built within that is small group leader training. And we take them through two classes of this is how you lead a small group. We talk through the practical side of it. We talk through the imagination side of what does your group look like? What do you want it to look like? How do you want it to operate? What are the objectives? We ask all those questions so that every small group leader asks those tougher questions and the logistical questions before they ever launch. And so yeah. So I don't know if you guys have anything similar that you take your leaders through.
Who teaches those classes, Brandon?
So the first 2 levels. So the first steps class is taught by a couple of us pastors and then a couple others who are teachers. There's 7 of those. And then when they go into the levels 1 and level 2 of discipleship process, that's a one-on-one coach situation. So we have coaches that are trained that kind of walk people through 1 and 2. Then when we get to level 3, which is the training sessions, we have 4 teachers that teach that. I do the small group training. Those 2 sessions, I do those 2 classes.
Okay. And then how do you guys get people into these groups? Is there like a, Sunday morning for most of you in your context? Is there like a push from the platform? Hey, go to the lobby or the booth in the back to sign up, and there's a list of every group we have to offer. If you want to lead a life group, you can sign up to do that there. If you just want to join one, you can sign up to do that there. Is there like a hub that you guys have?
So we have a big board in our lobby, and it has all of the life groups on it with all the pertinent information. So the name, the demographic, is there childcare, the contact information, who the leader is. So the idea is they can go and they can take a picture of whatever groups they're interested in, and then they can follow up or just attend whatever. So what about you guys? How do you guys integrate people into your small group systems?
Hey, so with me, can you guys hear me now?
Yep.
Gotcha.
Okay. So in our group, we do after the sermon every Wednesday, we break up. So we're not in home groups yet. We're kind of transitioning that way. And so every week after our sermon, we do a life group. And so if you come on Wednesdays, I think this probably wouldn't work with adults because they want a little more freedom, but maybe it would work with young adults, Alan. I don't know. If you come on Wednesdays at the end, they all split up into grades. So if you're in a grade, we give a little bit of direction at the end, and they kind of not have to, but they do kind of have to go there. So we're trying to transition into home groups. Maybe something cool for you, Alan. You're trying to make that transition to like do them at the end of service. It's cool because you get deeper faster. I know that when we go to home groups, it'll probably be less hard to get there as quick as we do because it comes straight after the sermon. But with us, like if you come, you're a part of a life group at least for 15 minutes out of the night, which is something really cool. I'd be interested in hearing after we're done with this with you guys talking about how I can transition because I do want to go to home groups, but that's kind of how we get it done right now.
So for adults in launching groups, I've been a part of a couple of different systems. One is when dealing with adults, they want to choose a group potentially. If the groups are completely new and there's not already groups that are established, they're going to choose based off of convenience of geographic area, whatever part of the city they live in.
Sure.
Based on the night. And then what time it is, if they've got kids and things like that, which maybe you guys aren't dealing with. So it's based off of convenience. Well, to get all of that information, we had to start with, of course, leaders, and we had to get leaders out. So of course, like any type of volunteerism, you got to have a good pathway, which most churches seem like they don't. So whether that's a next steps or some other type of guest central that people are going to go to. So in starting out, we went leaders so that we could create the days, times, and geographic areas, and then that was all set up visually, like Brandon's talking about. Then people could go on a particular given Sunday, which was the launch Sunday, where families or individuals could sign up for their groups. Then after that, because not every Sunday is a launch Sunday, we would run that. Our pathway would be through next steps, and of course there's multi-pronged development there with volunteerism. So home groups becomes part of some of the or better way to say it, advertisements that happen on a Sunday morning. Hey, there's home groups available. But I think overall, the one thing that you want to establish culturally is an inviting culture.
Yeah.
When it comes to connecting, create with your home groups and through your home group leaders, because your home group leaders all of a sudden become core. They become your Paul Revere's. And so you want to create that culture first of inviting to life groups, and then you don't have to create solutions later on to create Velcro points or to create community. That inviting culture will take care of itself.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you, Josh. You guys have a pretty strong culture that leans toward small groups already, correct?
You're talking to me.
Yeah. It's already built in for you guys, right?
Surprisingly, no. The Dutch are incredibly isolated. They're a cold culture. And
no, I'm sorry. So within the Dutch culture. I'm saying within your church. Isn't that a part of the DNA of the church already?
Yeah, the Dutch church is already. Yeah, and we've actually found out through the few short months we've been in existence that we could almost skip the church service and just do life groups.
Right.
And amazing how isolated people are.
Wow. Interesting.
Well, hey guys, I didn't realize it's already after 2. So we're doing so good. So I don't want to keep you guys on any longer than than you want to. So if you guys need to step off, you're more than welcome to. This was great. I hope, Alan, this was helpful for you. And really,
I felt like the only guy needing help. Sorry, guys.
no, it's all good. I mean, where we are right now is not where we're going to be forever. So it's always good because who knows what the next context will be. So, yeah. Any last thoughts or anything?
I kind of started following Pastor Patrick clear in the beginning when I started doing home groups. And I feel like you guys always do a really, really great job in being innovative with life groups. Do you have resources available where you can email all of us the points from today and even your structure and systems that you have for home groups?
Yeah, definitely. So I can send you the notes, for the healthy small group system. I send you that, and then I'll just put together kind of what our system is, just in kind of a bullet point form. And then any questions you guys have beyond that you want me to expound on, I can do that too.
Great.
Alrighty. So yeah, let me make a note of that.
I have a page
All right,
and a
guys.
half of notes, but anything else would be helpful.
Nice. Does anybody have a page and a half of notes? I think Alan wins today.
He's going to
All
win
right.
every week.
Yeah, probably. All right. Well, yeah, I will get that stuff together for you. I'll send it to you guys in the next few days. And then again, keep sending me what you're dealing with, questions, issues, problems. One of the things that I want to do on here is problem solve for each other. So we all have different contexts, different experiences, and so if we can problem solve with one another, not only do we fix our problems, but in your context, you look like a genius. So that's kind of the idea. So yeah. So next week we'll have something else that we'll tackle, and yeah, I hope you guys have a great week. Josh, your Thursday is pretty much over, so I hope you have a good Friday.
It's still completely light out.
What time is
so
it there?
crazy.
It's 9 o'clock. The sun won't start setting for about another hour and 15 minutes.
Wow. And it's still Thursday?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. 9:15 Thursday.
Dang. That's cool.
That's crazy. Well, one of these days I'm going to visit. I am Dutch, so I'd like to come out to at least visit.
We're going
Have
to
you
a
been across
store.
Party Coopers?
Yeah, we're going to a store tomorrow that is called Party Coopers, and it's a paper
Really?
store. Pard is horse, and Cooper
Uh-huh.
is trader.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's spelled with the two
Angela
A's,
is-
correct?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so watch out, everybody. My wife is actually fourth generation pure Dutch, so I haven't heard "if you ain't Dutch, you ain't much" here, but I have heard it in Iowa quite a bit.
Yep. Oh yeah. It's a real thing.
Yeah, it's unbelievable how many connections there are from here to the States, though, because the Dutch colonized the U.S. So there's American pie is not American pie. It's here. It started here.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Awesome.
That's crazy.
Well, maybe we'll set up a mission trip, Josh.
that would be awesome. Yes, bring it. Let's go.
Hey, you give me the details and I'll figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. We're looking at open doors for campus ministry on Erasmus University through Chi Alpha here, and so there's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of low-lying fruit because people are just they're really looking for genuineness in
Really?
relationships with God and with each other, and so
That's awesome.
yeah. So keep us in prayer for that in the next really few weeks and months as that develops. So yeah, and then bring a whole team. Let's go rock and roll Erasmus University.
Yeah. Let's do it. That's what I did in Ireland, man. We brought a team of 12, and every day we went up to the university there, and we just sat around with lunch and just met people and invited them to church and built relationships. It was great.
Yeah. The first day we ever went on campus, we ran into a French girl talking to a German guy, and their common language is English. And so It's really is. It's amazing because the culture is in front of the U.S. as far as that, the social things I was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And so their religion is no longer a tainted word or like evangelical like it is in the States.
Mm-hmm.
It's just an old thing that we used to think about. And so Christianity in a genuine way is really something kind of new almost. And so it makes it a lot of fun. Makes it a lot of fun that way.
Yeah. Cool. All right, man.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for being here today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fun. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, man. See ya.
All right, bye.
All right, boys. It's just us.
Then there was 4.
And then there was 4.
Yeah.
Did we lose Brandon again?
What's that?
Did we lose Brandon Rogers?
No,
No,
he's still.
No, his microphone's gone.
No, I think he's delayed. Oh no, I turned him down.
Oh my God.
Because you were like stirring
I mean,
your eyes. You're like sitting there stirring your eyes and stirring your eyes. I'm like, seriously, dude.
You can turn people down?
Yeah, man, I can do anything on this side.
Chief can do whatever Chief wants.
I don't have rice. I have
You
no,
can.
I have no rice. I have a drink. Was it my drink?
Yeah, you were like stirring your eyes.
Oh, my ice. Sorry. I
Yeah.
didn't know it was picking it up that well.
Yeah.
My microphone's right here on my chest next to my ice. That's why.
Nice. What was the deal with your stuff?
I don't know, man. I was Googling it the whole time. When I switched over to my phone, then we went in that like dubstep drop for a second.
We took a little Alice in Wonderland trip.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, I know.
The blue pill.